charcoal is forgiving enough that even when I press this drawing in with my stump, this is a really strong paper, rolled, compressed paper stump, and it's going to lighten. As dark as I had everything, it's still going to bring most of this up to a almost mid-tone. But what it's going to do is it's going to push it into the paper enough that when I start to draw and I start to shadow and lighten, that where I have stumped with the paper, it's going to stay pressed into the subject a whole lot more so. It's going to be harder to lift this tone out because it's in shadow than it will be to lift my lights out. Therefore, I have an opportunity to not have to worry so much about lifting the lights out too pale. It's going to stay toned for me, and it'll be easy to lift my lights because there's hardly anything there, and it will be harder to lift my darks with that same pressure. It stays in a darker tone. Therefore, I have a value structure from 1 to 10 all the way across the board. This is my shadow darks from 5, say, is the middle. These are my lights. So that, if that were reflected light or something that was bounced up into the shadow pattern, it's going to be hard for me to get that out lighter than that unless I grab an eraser. I have to be intentionally lifting that out to successfully make it lighter than that once I've done this. So I uniformly put this in. I do not separate any of the shadow shapes. I don't start to draw yet. I don't. Now I can lift out in here, there's some halftones and a little bit of bridge light that comes through. I can still lift that out, but I want to make sure that the simplest shapes are pressed into the paper and retain a nice uniform dark and light. I want almost a single two-tone pattern of light and shadow before I begin the drawing. That shadow mat basically is what it's referred to in both painting and drawing. Refines or makes decisive, well, let's just say it decides what the drawing is going to look like completed. If I can tell what this looks like now, I can look at this and tell you that this looks like a man in a hat. I can't really tell you that it looks like a beard or anything else, but I pretty much should be able to, if I've successfully done this part of it. His jacket's fairly dark. So if I can successfully do this part of it, I should be able to tell somewhat of what my reference looks like. Fairly easy. And to me, that looks pretty darn good. So now I have an option. At this point, I can lift out the basic structure of the lights. And to do so, I would need to lift with my finger, just in a guesstimate. This does not have to be perfect. I don't want to start lifting my lights out to be as light as they're going to be in the final pass. I want to make sure that I'm giving myself room to adjust. So I have halftones and highlights and things like that that I do not want to chisel away exactly just yet. But now you can see him emerge. And notice when I got to the eye and lifted, where I pushed the stump in with the extra charcoal I put on, it stays darker. And then where I brought up the halftone, or where I brought up the halftones to lights in the image of his face, it stayed fairly light. Now his hat passes behind, even though there's some bounce light and some light up across the edge of his hat. And see how this is bounce light and shine through light that passes through the weave of his hat. So it's not in light, it's still in shadow, but I can still control those lights. His forehead, lifts up, and already I'm starting to read the simplest design of my model. So the better I do this, now he's got light that passes over the bridge of his nose. I think they call this Rembrandt lighting. And therefore, I still have control of not getting that too light. If I pulled that as light as this, it would look like it was in the direct path of the light source. I don't want that. I can lift the lights now out of, he's got a tie underneath his beard. I want the beard to have tone. I still want the beard to have tone. This is tone on his beard over his upper lip. I will put the darks back in a minute. I just want to organize the passage of light off my reference. He's got a, I forget what the ascot, no, I forget what they call those. It's kind of a scarf thing. But it's picking up some light. And I'm going to do this, set the tone through this entire drawing easily. I mean, not easily, with intention. I don't want to jump through here and make myself ramp through this process. This is setting up my drawing.